News, analysis, commentary, and debate. And there are lots of debates going on all over the place and lots of news today. Let's start with the Wells Report front page. Devon Archer, according to CNN, told the House Oversight Committee yesterday that his former business partner, Hunter Biden, was selling the illusion of access to his father. This, according to a source familiar with the closed-door interview, the latest development in the Republican-led congressional investigation into the president's son. The source also reiterated that Archer provided no evidence connecting President Joe Biden to any of his son's foreign business dealings. This, by the way, from CNN, in case you're wondering about the bias. After the interview concluded, a second source told CNN that Archer did affirm to the committee that Hunter Biden was selling the illusion of access to his father, but later clarified the president's son was actually selling the illusion of access to Washington, D.C., and how knowledge of how it worked. Okay. President Trump, on his part, is pressuring GOP lawmakers to put actions behind their words and begin the impeachment process against President Biden or face electoral consequences. Quote, any Republican that doesn't act on Democrat fraud should be immediately primaried and get out, Trump told his supporters at a campaign rally in Erie. We have a lot of good, tough Republicans around. People are going to run against them, and people are going to win. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has repeatedly dismissed the notion that he is facing pressure from the former president to go after President Biden, calling an impeachment inquiry an appropriate course of action. Quote, if the Biden administration does not provide the information we need, we would go to an impeachment inquiry, McCarthy said at a press conference last week, referencing House Republicans' various investigations into whether Biden benefited from Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings. This was shocking news. A nondescript warehouse in Reedley, California, turned out to be an illicit, Chinese-linked lab filled with hundreds of vials of pathogens, including COVID-19, HIV, and malaria. This from the London Daily Mail. Also reported by USA Today. The black market lab was brought into official attention in early March when a code enforcement officer noticed a garden hose sticking out of the back of the warehouse. A combined state, local, federal probe was launched, resulting in the proper disposal of all biohazardous materials earlier this month. People living in the surrounding areas are safe, according to officials. A combined local, state, and federal probe launched, as we said. Reedley manager Nicole Zieba told KRON San Francisco, Channel 4, I've been in government for 25 years. I've never seen anything like that. A warrant was issued soon after the officer noticed the code violation that allowed officials to search the building, where they were shocked by what they found. In a special room, health officials discovered nearly 1,000 white lab mice, 200 of which were already dead. Prado said the illegal lab was conducting tests on the mice that would help develop COVID-19 test kits that were also found at the site. In addition to the mice, thousands of vials containing biohazardous materials were also found. Testing by the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention revealed that at least 20 potentially infectious viral, bacterial, and parasitic agents, including COVID-19, malaria, E. coli, were present. This, according to House documents. Elsewhere, Senator Lindsey Graham reiterated yesterday that a Russian nuclear attack against Ukraine could be viewed as an attack on NATO. In fact, he said it would be viewed as an attack on NATO, even though Ukraine is not a member of the alliance. Graham delivered his warning after former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said that Russia would have to use nuclear weapons if Ukrainian forces threatened Russian territory. Quote, imagine if the offensive, which is backed by NATO, was a success and they tore off part of our land. Then we would be forced to use a nuclear weapon according to the rules of a decree from the president of Russia. This from Medvedev in an article making a reference to Russia's nuclear doctrine that would authorize a nuclear response if Russia's territory was threatened by a conventional attack. Lindsey Graham immediately said, quote, to my Russian friends who talk about using nuclear weapons in Ukraine, you need to understand that that would be an attack on NATO itself, given Ukraine's proximity to NATO territory. Quote, time to sober up, realize your barbaric invasion of Ukraine is not working, withdraw, and save many young Russians from pointless death, unquote, said the senator. President Biden has, as you know, acknowledged the presence of his seventh grandchild, Navy Joan Roberts, He did so on camera for the first time. Conservative commentators shredded him for waiting so long. President Biden released a statement on Friday. Our son Hunter and Navy's mother London are working together to foster a relationship that is in the best interests of their daughter, preserving her privacy as much as possible going forward. He also added that this was not a political issue. It's a family matter. Jill and I only want what is best for our grandchildren, including Navy. Now, yesterday, the president acknowledged Navy's existence as his seventh grandchild when he spoke on the Jay Shatty podcast. Quote, I have 7 grandkids. 5 of them are old enough to talk on the phone every day. I either text them or call them. In state news, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed a bill last week that would allow for non-U.S. citizens to apply to become police officers, and he defended the legislation against critics. During a press conference where he spoke about legislation protecting the reproductive rights in the state, Pritzker emphasized that the bill would be limited to individuals who are legally allowed to work in the United States and who are legally allowed to possess firearms. This is at odds with federal law that says that only U.S. citizens can be police officers or sheriff's deputies. Quote, we have the ability for people who are legally here in the country and permanent residents and DACA residents to apply for jobs as police officers, unquote. HB 3571 was passed by both chambers of the General Assembly earlier this year. The bill's language says that individuals who are not citizens but are legally authorized to work in the U.S. under federal law will be allowed to apply for jobs with police departments beginning on January 1st, 2024. U.S. military news from CNN. President Joe Biden has decided the headquarters of U.S. Space Command will remain in Colorado and not move to Alabama. This, according to 2 U.S. officials speaking to CNN. U.S. Space Command, which is a joint command and separate from the U.S. Space Force military branch, is currently housed in Colorado Springs. The Air Force recommended near the end of President Trump's presidency that the command be moved to Huntsville, Alabama. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall recently recommended to Biden that the headquarters be moved to Alabama in line with the initial Air Force recommendation. But Biden ultimately followed the advice of the head of Space Command, General James Dickinson, who argued that the headquarters should remain in Colorado because it will be fully operational in August, and moving it now would jeopardize military readiness, according to one official. Speaking of space, NBC News reports that NASA is listening for Voyager 2 after losing contact with the spacecraft billions of miles away. Voyager 2 is now moving through interstellar space. It's been out of touch ever since flight controllers accidentally sent a wrong command more than a week ago that caused the satellite to tilt its antenna away from Earth. The spacecraft's antenna shifted a mere 2 degrees, but that was enough to cut communications. Although it's considered a long shot, NASA said that its huge dish in Canberra, Australia, is on the lookout for any stray signals from Voyager, currently more than 12 billion miles distant. It takes more than 18 hours for a signal to reach the Earth from so far away. In the coming week, the Canberra antenna, part of NASA's Deep Space Network, will also bombard Voyager 2's vicinity with the correct command, hoping it hits the mark, according to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. That's the agency that manages the Voyager missions. Otherwise, NASA will have to wait until October for an automatic spacecraft reset that should restore communications, according to NASA officials. The State Department is slow in issuing passports, and it's impacting people's vacation plans. Connie Rayner and Vicki Heller were making their packing lists for Europe for a cruise of a lifetime. This reported by CBS News. We booked in 2022 not realizing our passports were about to expire, said Rayner. She, by the way, the trip included 81 family and friends. They say coordinating logistics was easy compared to renewing their passports. They applied for renewal about 3 months before departure, then realizing the documents might not arrive in time. They requested expedited processing. They even offered to fly to an in-person appointment anywhere in the country. None was available. They missed the boat, receiving their passports several days after their ship left. The State Department is continuing to receive a surge of passport applications, 430,000 of them per week, with turnaround times now up to 13 weeks. Panicked passengers are flocking to passport offices and petitioning members of Congress for help. The U.S. issued a record 22 million passports in the 2022 fiscal year as Americans prepared to travel more freely again after COVID-19. Food news from CBS. The age of lab-grown chicken is taking flight at one of Chef Jose Andres' famed Washington, D.C. restaurants. Diners will have the chance to be some of the first people in the country to taste what researchers have been working on for years. The chicken does not come from a chicken. It's instead grown. It's grown from chicken cells. Good Meat, the California-based company supplying the lab-grown poultry, calls it cultivated chicken. Cultivating meat is a way of starting with a cell and ending with chicken, beef, pork, without all the other issues in between, said company co-founder, CEO Josh Tetrick. The chicken cells are bathed in a nutrient broth in tanks called bioreactors. The genetic profile is the same as slaughtered chicken, he told CBS News. Federal regulators in June approved the sale of lab-grown meat from Good Meat, based in Alameda, California. The nearby Berkeley-based Upside Foods also has part of that particular technology and approval. Environmental advocates say cultivating meat is more sustainable compared to traditional livestock farming because it uses less water and land. Other researchers say the environmental impacts of cultivating meat will need to be closely monitored. Indeed, just by virtue of creating this meat in a lab doesn't mean necessarily that it's better for the environment. This, according to Ned Spang. He is the Associate Professor of Food Science and Technology at UC Davis. A day after putting up a flashing X sign atop the San Francisco headquarters of X, which is the artist formerly known as Twitter, Elon Musk had the sign taken down just days after it was installed. The old Twitter sign featuring a blue bird was removed from the building over the course of several days after Elon Musk announced the company's rebranding on July 24th. While TWIT, was quickly removed, remained up by itself for a brief period because the company did not have the necessary permits for the sign takedown. This is after not having the necessary permits for the sign installation. The city agency told an inspector they spoke with Twitter representatives and the building maintenance engineer representatives and declined access to the sign. But they said, the city officials said it was a temporary lighted sign for an event.